I had the complete pleasure of speaking with Brian Yoon, a co-founder and CEO of Woodstock today. He was amazing. And I like to think about like the chances for success for particular entrepreneurs. Brian has a huge chance of success. And I'm not saying like I'm a leading indicator and that I know exactly what I'm talking about at all times, but let me put it to you this way. Brian is an engineer. He worked in finance. He built algorithmic trading desks. He worked with the regulators. He worked at Twitter for 2 or 3 years and saw the power of social, and also worked and helped build the Coinbase business, not just in Japan, but in Asia. He understands how all of these things come together.
And I want Woodstock to be a go-to place for any investing. So whether you're investing in stocks or bonds or crypto and FX, whatever that is. And our priorities will obviously change and things will take a long time. But I want Woodstock to be a good place where people trust. And if I go there, I can get valuable advice. Not advice as in not like stock recommendation advice, but like as in like just people just giving coaching, like, oh, this is a good book, or this is a how you should think, like that kind of advice, right? So this is where people should come for the community, their valuable community, and also for easy access to markets, and also easy access to a bunch of different financial products, but also just be a better financial literate, just increase your literacy in the markets, and therefore just become a better professional.
Hi, this is Michael Waitz, and welcome back to the Asia Tech Podcast. Brian Yoon, a co-founder and CEO of Woodstock, is with us today. Brian, I cannot thank you enough for doing this today. Before we start, let's give our listeners a little bit of your kind of interesting background for some context, yeah?
Yeah, hey Michael, thanks for having me. So my background, so I was born and raised in Korea, and immigrated to Vancouver, Canada when I was 13. So started like secondary school there in Vancouver, beautiful place. Spent 5 years, and then went to Toronto, near Toronto. Went to an engineering school near Toronto for 5 years. Studied electrical and computer engineering. So I'm an engineer by training, and that kind of like sort of shaped my character and my career over time as well. And my last internship while I was in college brought me to Japan. So I was like 22 at the time, and I loved Japan and loved the experience. So I came back full time for a full time job opportunity at one of the international banks, and built like trading systems. That's how I started my sort of investment banking as an engineer initially for 3 years. And then I got a chance to become a trader. So I was always passionate about markets, like financial markets and equities. And so I loved it initially. So I did it for 6 years across 2 different banks, Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch. And I liked it, but I realized that I like equity not because of like moving money for hedge funds, but I like equity because I like how the companies build their revenue streams and diversify and manage risk and cut costs and like generate profit. Like that's what I liked more. So I was always like investing on the sidelines and understanding like how the companies operate, learn competition, try to project their future outcomes, right? So that's what I was passionate about. So I initially I thought I would be really, I thought I would really like trading. I did for a while, but then, I like the fundamentals of like the building companies and operating companies even more. So that's when I realized I wanted to like go back to my root, tech, and actually join a tech company, right? So I joined Twitter for 3.5 years, and luckily, like Twitter was just growing massively in Japan.
Yeah.
So so I joined. It was an interesting time actually. Twitter was on headlines for like a lot of negativity, right? It was the stock price was like just taking a nosedive, and it was crashing. So everybody around me was like, "Why are you, leaving your well-paid Morgan Stanley job, right, and joining a sinking ship?" I'm like, "No, it's not a sinking ship." And I guess Twitter is called X now. It's a very different place now, but
yeah.
But that aside, I mean, it was a really interesting like culture shock experience as well. Like how they do things in tech company, very different from how this like how the investment banks do things, right? So I love the experience of actually working in a tech company and building businesses. So I had like a few different roles at Twitter, and then I love the social media aspect of it. I really understood the leverage that you have of having internet as an audience, right? So you can do a lot of things, and obviously people, understand this very well now. I guess with TikTok and a lot of like influencers. But when I joined, it was still kind of early, building audience and making advertising revenue and that kind of stuff. But I left Twitter for a couple reasons. One is kind of this like the privacy GDPR and came up and it kind of became a hot topic, and Facebook was now Meta was in like kind of trouble with Cambridge Analytica, and I kind of felt like, oh, this may be not the the rising star anymore. This whole industry is probably gonna not gonna grow exponentially from here. So at the time Coinbase was kind of like ready to build out Asia. So and they approached me to ask if I'm interested. I'm like, hell yeah, this is like a rocket ship, right?
But it's also
So
but it's also like the perfect combination of all of your skills as well, right? Because the
that's
engineering
right,
into the digital currency and but also the investment angle of it. This is like fits in
exactly.
perfectly with what you were.
Yeah, exactly. So I was very happy to hear from them, and I really wanted to join. So yeah, so I made that decision to leave X, Twitter at the time, and join Coinbase. And I was also like, I'm always like believing in the nonlinear upside, and Coinbase felt like one of those opportunities that is very hard to like, I wouldn't miss that opportunity, right? So I jumped on that rocket ship, and there was like 2 years before IPO.
Oh
And
wow, good
yeah,
for you.
I love yeah, the outcome was quite good. A lot of fluctuations obviously in the market, but yeah, I think the crypto opportunity was kind of interesting. So I did Coinbase for about 2 years. A little over 2 years, setting up the licenses for them in Japan and help hire a bunch of people and set up the operation. Then I realized actually like I want to do even more. I want to build my own company. It's like again coming back to why I was interested in equity and the non-linear upside is because I like building and operating, and I like to have the full control of my fate of my business. So, and it kind of suits my personality very, very well. So, I thought it's the right time to take this risk, right? I have, now I have can take more risk. I have enough risk tolerance, and I can also see myself really enjoy this ride. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. Luckily, Coinbase also really supported my decision at the time, and they also backed us a little bit with their Coinbase Ventures, and that's how we started about 3.5 years ago, and now here we are running Woodstock.
Can I back up a little bit? I just want to talk a little bit about engineering into trading, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember when I was sitting on the trading desk at Goldman Sachs and we started hiring engineers to sit with us, right? And, I was joking with somebody about this a couple of days ago. I was joking actually with a guy from CNN who was going to be on the show soon.
Hmm.
And he's in the sort of programmatic advertising business, which frankly is not much different than algorithmic trading, right? And we were talking about how those
Actually,
things
yes,
are similar, yeah?
very
And
similar. Yeah.
when I first started trading, I was on the trading desk at Morgan Stanley for training in New York, and it was literally just like a bunch of guys from Brooklyn,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
A bunch of what I would call wise guys and tough guys. But over time, we started hiring PhDs and engineers from MIT and from Stanford and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And when we started hiring them, I would talk to them like, "Why do you want to be a trader?" And one of the
Hmm.
guys said to me, and I'll never forget it, engineers are trained to minimize noise and look for signals. And that's
Hmm.
kind of what trading is, right? Just get rid of all the
Hmm.
extraneous information, look for the signals about which way the market's going to go or which way an equity is going to go,
Hmm.
and then make
Hmm.
decisions. I'm curious what you think about engineers as traders.
That's a very interesting perspective. I never thought of it exactly that way, but now that you mention it, I think that a lot of that is correct, right? Like, I never actually worked on as a trader on the buy side. I was sort of the sell side algorithmic trading, right? So looking after hedge funds, but I understand the mentality of like the logic of reducing noise and actually looking for the right signal and alpha. And actually, that's like quite similar to founders' mindset as well. There's a lot of noise in the world that kind of like distracts you. Hey, like maybe you need to do this, maybe you need to pivot and do this thing. Like everything looks greener on the other side, but nothing is easy. Right?
For
So
sure.
you gotta remove all those temptations and like stick to your belief. And sometimes like every day is like noise in the world that kind of like, oh, this other startup raised this much money and they look great. I'm like, yeah, AI is great, like, yes, but what is there to really that can actually sustain? I mean, AI is great, don't get me wrong. I'm not generalizing AI or anything, but just yeah, it's just a lot of noise in the world that may not be sort of relevant, and understanding that noise versus and just separating that from real signal is a key skill, I think, as an engineer, also as a trader, I guess, also as an entrepreneur.
You're at Coinbase, right? Which must have been just a phenomenally interesting place to work. But it sounds like you were there when they were setting things up. Like if you literally had to go and get the
Yeah,
licenses and figure that stuff out,
yeah,
in a way, it's what's the right word? It's like the testing ground for your own entrepreneurial journey in a way, right? Because you've
that's
got to
right.
figure out all
That's
these
right.
little things and you're sitting there going, wait a
That's
second, I
right.
could do this for my own company. You're either making physical notes or taking mental notes, which is perfectly fine, right? And again, they
That's
supported
right.
you because they saw
Mm,
what you were.
mm.
But when you were there, can you talk about maybe some of the things you learned? Because you talked about the difficulty of entrepreneurship that then
Yeah,
helped you start Woodstock.
yeah. Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a really a key question, I guess. So I learned a few things. So going through the regulatory sort of like filings and back and forth with like answering questions, and it takes forever for these crypto operators to get their licenses, right? And securities brokers to get their licenses. But that's the reality of setting up businesses. It takes a long time, and so it kind of teaches you patience. And there's also a lot of pressure in the world that says like, no, you got to do this quicker and quicker. And that's also true because you also need to maximize shareholders' value, right? So all that time that's getting burned, and the burn rate, like who's, yeah. But so it's really the balance of like having that peace, right, while receiving all that pressure and noise, but also like, okay, this is a long game, and staying focused and doing things right. It's a really important soft skill to have, right, when founding a company. And I thought, okay, like if I can endure this at Coinbase, I can probably do this for my own company. So that's one thing that I learned, and that regulatory like back and forth is so valuable because I need to now, we're licensed as an intermediary broker now, and things may change in the future, but yeah, we're very regulated now too, right? So we need to navigate that space. Another key thing that I learned is like there's so much un- there's so much I guess variance in the market, right? So if you remember, like crypto now it's volatile, but like a few years ago it was even way more volatile,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
2017, right? 2019, like 2021, like it was just like a huge roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
And now kind of Japanese yen moves like that. It's kind of funny.
Exactly.
Just a joke, but yeah, yeah, that unexpected sort of outcome, the variance, it just makes it things really hard, right? So how do you actually um, stay focused and like stay long term? Uh, I guess focus for the long term outcome, but also like really believe in yourself while there's so much, you know, sort of ups and downs in the market. And Coinbase really taught me that, right? Like the price, the share price with the Bitcoin price and all these asset prices, it's very hard to model it out, right? So I was basically biz ops, and it's very hard to model out. Like, okay, like if you use this past 1 year, it tells you a very different story than if you use like this other year, right? Because the volume and the price, everything changes, right? So how do you actually model this out and actually believe it in the outcome?
Can I ask you this as well? Because this is, look, I lived in Japan for 20 something years, and I actually dealt with the FSA, the Japan Financial Services Agency, a couple of
Mm,
times. We were audited once when I was at Goldman, and I think another time when I was somewhere else. I can't remember. Um,
mm,
it's a very unique institution, but from what I've heard, and I published an episode today on one of my other shows, that like they're changing. They're much more progressive. They'll chat with you on WhatsApp.
mm.
Like they'll do a whole bunch of things that they weren't doing in the,
Really? Chat
yeah,
with you? What's that? I never
yep.
heard.
I mean, they do.
That's
So I
great.
was talking to a guy
That's
who's
great.
building. Yeah, I was talking to a guy who's building an insurtech company. He was like, "Yeah, if I want to talk to them, I can just like chat to them really quickly on WhatsApp, and they'll respond to me, and maybe we'll set up a meeting or
What?
chit chat and stuff like that." It's way more
Okay.
progressive than it was when I was there. But
Wow.
you and I have like something in common, even though it may. Well, we have a bunch of things in common, right?
Right.
But we're both foreigners in Japan, and I think it ends up being. I always thought that like it kind of went two ways. One, I got a
Hmm.
little bit of a discount on everything because they were like, he doesn't know how
Yeah.
this works. But
Yep.
on the other hand, I got the reverse of like, he doesn't know how this works kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Can you
Give
talk a
him a
little bit
pass.
about that
Yeah.
experience, and not just with the FSA, but just
Yeah.
like in general?
In general, yeah. I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right. So I also feel that way. So um yeah, so sometimes I do feel that I have it harder because I'm a foreigner, and it doesn't matter how good Japanese I speak, right? And I do speak pretty fluently, not native of course. I came when I was like 23, right? But I speak it pretty fluently by now, but it's not the same, right? I'm still a foreigner running the business. But at the same time, yeah, you're also right. Like sometimes because I'm a foreigner, I'm not expected to behave the same like the norm, the societal norm that they expect. I can be a little, you know, I can sort of walk on the edge and I'll be okay. Like, oh, he's
Yep.
a foreigner, so that's
Right.
okay. Like it also feels great when you have that. So yeah, so I think net I actually do like it. I think it also gives me a competitive a niche edge that others don't have. Because if it's hard to stand out as like, oh, you're one of many Japanese entrepreneurs, but if I'm a foreign guy that people call us gaijin, right? Gaikokujin. But yeah, if I'm a gaijin foreigner founder. If I want to be successful so that I can, show that even foreigners can build a great successful business in Japan, and there are not that many cases. And yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about building in Japan.
Has the startup ecosystem changed a lot in Japan in general? I mean, Japan's a big country, right? So it's hard to say for sure. But Fukuoka about 5 or 6 years ago decided to want to be startup city in
Hmm.
Japan. The governor of Fukuoka has made a really large push. My wife lives there, so I've been down there. I've been
Mm,
to startup city. Like I've done all those things. But then you have Kansai, right, where Osaka and Kobe are also striving to be this. They're working with I think 500 startups or some such thing. I can't remember
yep,
exactly.
yep,
And then
Kobe,
Tokyo's
yep,
looking around going, whoa, everybody, like hold my beer because we have all the money here, we have all the resources
mhm,
here, we have
yeah,
all the financial services companies here, and huge corporate headquarters. We should be doing something too. Like, how does the startup ecosystem look to you from your perch, building a company from
yeah.
scratch? Yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to see more decentralization, right? More and more decentralization for Japan would be a huge boost for the economy. However, I also, I think it is very Tokyo centric, right? They have like startup events and like sometimes in Naha, Okinawa, and sometimes in like Kyoto and stuff, and people travel. Yeah, that's great. But it's hard to start a headquarter in some other city taking that much risk that you know, um, you'll be so like away from all the information flow and the capital flow, right? So I don't think that many startups will actually take that risk. But that said, some of these, local cities will localize. Sorry, the Fukuokas and the Osakas of Japan will, of course, yeah, the startups and capital, right? So I'd love to see things change over time, but I think still a lot of it is just, of course, it's all Tokyo.
yeah. Look, I'll comment on my own region, right? They're trying really hard in KL. They're trying hard in Bangkok, where I live. They're trying super hard in Manila. But at the end of the day, all the money's in Singapore. It just is.
Of
Right. And
course,
in a
yeah,
way, there's this big magnet of some of the guys and gals here to go to even Silicon Valley. Right. So I
hmm,
get it. It's just like you
yeah,
have to be where the money is. You have to be where the other headquarters are because those are where your potential
yeah,
clients are as well. And if you're getting on the bullet train every day, and I love
yeah,
Fukuoka, I'll support everything that they do, just like you. Right. Because,
yeah,
I have a place there, but still, it's hard to get away from all the capital flows.
yeah,
Let's talk
right.
about.
Unless,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, unless your core, business has a very strong reason to be in those
Sure, sure,
cities,
sure,
right?
sure.
Those are exceptions.
Yeah. And look, I live in Bangkok. I'd love to see the startup ecosystem in Bangkok be bigger, more vibrant, be better. But every time somebody starts a company here, they incorporate in Singapore for different reasons than it is in Japan. Not the least of which is it's governed by English law. And I don't mean the language, I just mean the system of English law. And particularly for companies in Thailand, it's just way better to be
Yeah. Mm,
incorporated there.
yeah.
You worked at Twitter, and it's just so obvious to me that like when entrepreneurs build companies, in a way, it's almost based on like a combination of their life's experiences,
Yes.
right? And I don't think, and you tell me where I'm wrong here, but like I don't think you could build a social investing app for people as well as you are without having had that experience at Twitter, right? Because there's no epiphany in life. You don't just wake up one day and go, social is going to be really important, but you lived it for a
Right.
while and you're like, I
Yeah.
see the impact here. I work in the financial services industry. Yucho alone has like Yucho, so the postal Japan postal savings alone has over 2 trillion, and yeah, I'm going to say the right word, dollars, right?
Yeah.
Like in savings there, so a massive pool of money
Yeah.
to invest. And for people that don't believe it's in trillions, just check Google, you'll see it.
Mm,
Um, but those things all coming together must have inspired the building of
yeah.
Woodstock. No?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I spent some years at Twitter understanding, the magnitude and the leverage that you can have by using internet, right? And it's sort of the quickest way to reach your target audience, and that's really powerful, right? So you either worked as you built your own audience as an influencer. That's one way to really understand the power, and you obviously live it, right? But me sort of working in Twitter, just understanding the inside of how this thing actually works, helped me understand, what it is, sort of what it's like to build an audience. And it's not easy, of course, but once you have it, it's just like, yeah, really like drastically reduces your CAC. If we think about it from a business perspective, but also like just from a customer sort of engagement perspective, it's just so powerful. And that's powerful from a business perspective, but for users, right? They learn so much. They can potentially learn a lot. There's also, again, a lot of noise, but if we can make it a really an interesting platform where investors come and interact and learn together, that can I felt that can really move the needle. Because, like, again, like, yeah, trillions of dollars of cash just sitting idle and doing nothing is just so bad for this country, right, Japan. So, like, we got to do something. But then how are you going to do something? You're not going to just write more newspaper articles, because no one's going to really read them. Like, it's not going to move the needle. So you got to do things that move the needle. And luckily, Japan is a very, very heavy social media consumption. So you see Twitter is like bigger than US. Elon Musk confirmed it. The conversation that's happening on Twitter in Japan is bigger than the US, right? And then the Instagram and TikTok, yeah, every social media that it reaches critical mass, it just gets really, really big in Japan. So the penetration, and there's a few reasons for that, right? Like, people spend a lot of time on like on train and commute, and then they just like find their friends because their friends are there. It's just kind of like draws people, like, really, really, it draws people onto those platforms. So we got to leverage what the things that work in Japan, and leveraging that, you can now build businesses, and you can now build things that actually will move them. Again, if we want to unlock the trillions of dollars of cash, we gotta start from social media. That's our philosophy. And luckily, I had that experience from Twitter. So yeah, I thought, okay, I'm kind of like destined to do this, and I am
That's what it sounds like
kind
to
of
me.
kind of the right fit, to be honest. So yeah, so I thought it was, yeah, a great opportunity to make an impact.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges just to educating people and young people to invest, right? Because they look at their parents and just think, oh, they were in the stock market. Maybe
Yeah,
they remember the bubble from like the late 80s and early 90s.
yeah,
Their parents got burned and stuff like that. And, back
yeah,
then, and I was
yeah.
there for the end of it, you'd have brokers literally coming and knocking on your door, but that doesn't happen
They
anymore.
still do.
So, how do they? Yeah, they still do. But young people are, I would think, way less receptive for someone just like knocking on your door going, buy some of
Mm,
this startup. You know what I mean? That's not going to
yeah,
work.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
how do you do that?
But
What is Woodstock doing to do that?
yeah, the challenge is, and this is going to take some time. Again, like, building
Yeah.
businesses takes a long time. So I'm not surprised that it's going to take a long time. But basically, a lot of Japanese people, they trust their friends, and they won't trust like company PRs, because those are basically like company PRs, right? But in other countries where sort of the investing is already kind of like norm, and it's like, of course that you would invest in money in sort of passive active, whatever it is, but people are circulating their assets, right? In Japan, that is kind of like the older generation says like, oh no, like we lost money, whatever. So that sort of like that precedence makes it harder, of course. They're telling their kids not to touch things that that are volatile and risky, because they kind of went through that painful experience. So that's definitely a hurdle. But again, like, and also because that sort of culture is there, friends, the users, the young users who are really happy with our platform, they also sometimes are hesitant to tell their friends, because they don't want to look like they're into some cult or some crazy thing that they shouldn't be. So they're pretty shy. So we talk to a lot of our users, and users tell us like, oh, I want to tell my friends, but I don't want to look, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to sort of lose my face, burning that bridge with my friend, my friendship. So that's the part that's going to take a long time, but we'll get there.
But I mean, the Japanese market, and I don't have it up in front of me right now, but when I arrived, again, just to give you a little bit of perspective, I want to get this number right. I think it was 39,000 when I arrived in Japan on February 20th, 1990. We can go back and look. It's a long time ago. And recently, the indices like passed those numbers.
Yeah.
There's been a massive rally, and you had to have been in Japan when I was
Yeah.
trading. It was literally like just going down, down, down. It went up a little bit, then
Yeah.
went down further. Like it was almost, if you were making money,
Yeah.
you were a genius. Either that, or you were
Yeah.
just shorting everything. Um,
Yeah.
but has that market rally helped you at all?
Of course, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, nobody wants to invest in a down market. Some professionals will short it or whatever, but retail. We were talking about retail people, right? So yeah, it's not only that they lost a lot of money. The older generation lost a lot of money at the bubble burst, but the Nikkei didn't really help. If at best it went sideways for a long time, right? So the recent rally over the last couple of years have definitely helped, and also the crypto sort of bull run in 2017. I think it really woke up the younger people. So they a lot, like there's about 6 million accounts now who have crypto accounts with various crypto exchanges, and it's yeah, it was kind of surprising, an eye-opening experience for me when I saw that. It was like, oh, that okay, like we say Japanese people are conservative, but actually if you double click into that, the older
Yeah, are
generation,
they?
of course they're conservative. They should be conservative. They're old, right? Like they should be conservative. That's the
Right.
right thing to do. But the younger generation, they're in crypto, and they're taking risks, right? And if you actually look at other metrics, right? If you look at other signs, right, like the horse racing, the FX market, the margin trading is like the
Yeah, yeah.
biggest in the world, right? So Japanese people, you cannot say they're conservative.
No.
Conservative. It's just a demographic. It's a lot of older generation. So on as a whole, yes, it's a conservative country. There's a lot of cash left, and sitting sidelines, but it's basically owned by a lot of older people. That's why. So we gotta make that shift. We gotta change that from the younger generation. We can't really change the 80-year old, and they should
Right.
just be conservative.
Look, one of the mistakes I think that new investors always make is they think they have to make really big bets. Right. I think they forget about this idea that, like, first of all, they don't understand compounding at all. And they just think, well, if I don't have 100 grand, like, what am I doing in the market to begin
Yeah,
with? Right. Because I can't make that much money. Do you want to talk
yeah,
about starting with just like a small amount of money, why it
yeah.
matters, and what the Woodstock approach is here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a few approaches that we have. Like we talked about the social element. So the
Yep.
social element is great because investing is actually very, very psychological, and
Yeah.
it's very emotional, right? So
Yep.
you get emotionally drained when the market keeps going down. So it's really good to have friends who you can talk to and just share that emotional feeling, ups and downs, right? So that's one angle. Another big approach that we have is like, yeah, we have to make it so small that everybody can afford to invest, right? So Japanese stock market, one of the biggest problems why people don't invest in equities is because you have to buy 100 shares of a company, right? Basically in Japan,
Right.
it's like
Round lots and
why
odd
why
lots.
yeah, round lots and all, like why that doesn't make any sense, right? So yes, there are brokers who now allow like odd lots and whatever, but basically it starts from 100 shares. So that really just puts away all the older, yeah, the younger generation. They don't have that much disposable income, right?
Yep.
So our approach is, yeah, let's just make it really easy. No, nobody needs to have, even hundreds. We can start. We basically at Woodstock, we recently made a change to make it um, to tradable from 200 yen. That's like a dollar 50, even less, right? So yeah, so we basically make it possible for everybody. Let's at least remove that hurdle, and yeah, make it fun and make it like, oh, you can learn investing. Yeah, you might lose, 10% of 200 yen. You might lose 20 yen. Learn a valuable lesson. That's
Right, right, right.
great, right? So nobody loses in this scenario, right? That's the
Yeah.
scenario that we wanted to create.
I like this. I like this idea of having a position. This is one of the things that we used to talk about a lot, right? For guys and gals that have never had a position, you don't understand like the psychological impact it has on you, whether it goes up or down, right? Because if you're winning, it feels great. You're like, I'm a genius. And if you're losing, you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. And you're right,
Yeah.
it's super social. Like even if you go back and look at crypto in 2017 and 2018 when it was like really going down, if you just like held it and stopped looking at it and
Yep.
didn't day trade it, well, then it went from whatever it was back then to 60 something thousand. Like you should have just
Yep.
done nothing. And if your friends were sitting there supporting you and just saying,
Yeah.
don't worry about it, nothing happens overnight.
Yeah.
And this is this thing I want to get back to. This is the thing I want to get back to
Yeah.
because you said this before. It's going to take time, right? And
It's gonna take time.
I made up this phrase like everyone's an overnight success 10 years later, right? Because that's when people notice you like,
Yeah.
oh my God, Brian's a genius in like 2034,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, Brad was just there, right there, right, at the right time, and
Right. You've been slogging for 10 years, but
sure.
investing's the same way,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
even the PayPal guys didn't wake up and then like a year later we're all billionaires, right? Just stuff just takes time to
Nobody.
gestate. And even
Yeah.
Amazon took 2 decades before it was profitable. Like
Yep.
all this stuff takes time. And I think people
Nvidia.
need to
Yeah.
realize that investing's the same thing. Do you want to talk at all
Yeah.
about the Woodstock index as well? Because I love the fact that you're building indices.
Wow.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I'm impressed you know about our Woodstock index. Yeah. So this is our so this is our
What did you
approach.
expect?
So thanks for doing the homework. Thanks for looking into that. So Woodstock Index, let me just explain what that is. So it's basically a community index. So just like S&P and NASDAQ index, right? So we built our own index that is owned by community, and it's weighted by how much people actually have positions collectively as a community. And so we add them up, and then we also weight that by the market cap of those companies, and then we basically and then we just choose 30. So the 30 companies will represent the performance of Woodstock community as an average of everybody. And we're very transparent. So every day it basically shows how we've done the previous day. And we also compare that to S&P, compared to NASDAQ. We started this last year, April, and ever since that, we just show that every day. And, we're higher beta, so that means higher risk than the market, and that's because a lot of people choose to take higher risk positions like Nvidia and Tesla
Yep.
of the world. But it doesn't need to be. Things can change. That's also the beauty of this index. People can just decide to, okay, I'm gonna reduce my risk and also take this other more passive, more I guess stable companies, let's say Coke or whatever, and that will change the weight of the index. So it kind of represents how we're doing as a community over versus the benchmark indices and S&P and NASDAQ things on.
Is there a hope for Woodstock as a company that the Woodstock index or Woodstock's indices, if you build more of them, will
Yeah.
become so well known that other people will have to invest in them, and then what happens after that? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's would be a really good scenario, right? The index becomes so popular, and everybody wants that becomes so valuable. The information of what people are buying and selling becomes so valuable. And then we also want to make it over time. And again, things take a long time to set these things up, but
I like
we
it.
want to make it tradable, right? We
Yeah,
want to
that's what I
make it into
mean.
basket and just
Yeah,
we
make
want
it
to
turn
make
it
it
into
into
an
basket
ETF,
and make
whatever.
it
Yeah.
tradable. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
of
because if you
course.
do that, and then the reason why Topics moves, the reason why Nikkei moves, the reason why the S&P moves is because people are benchmarked to it, right? So if it
Yep,
goes up, they have to buy more because their performance has to keep going. The individual stocks in there their weightings change
yep,
as it gets higher. If it's market cap weighted, like
yep.
these are things that a lot of people that invest in indices don't necessarily know, but you do. So if you can get people interested, then they'll do the same thing they do with other indices, right? They'll just buy the
That's
top
right.
5 stocks in the index, and then
Yep.
the index will change, and that dynamic
Yep.
is going to create more interest, which then gives this virtuous
That's right.
circle, right? So that's super cool
That'll be a
strategy.
great business outcome. Yeah. So knowing that we are not ready to make it into a tradable asset
Yeah,
yet,
yeah,
we started this index first so that one, customers can understand what index means and how these things actually work.
yep, yep,
And also two, we can start building the track record.
yeah.
So it's even if it's not tradable yet, it has a lot of value that it's already generating for us.
I love this idea. Is anybody else even doing that? I haven't heard about this before. Maybe they are, but I just haven't spoken to the right
I don't
people.
I don't think so. Not as a retail trading app, right?
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So yeah, we actually intentionally don't look at other competitors' apps so much because
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't want my product ideas to be biased
Yeah,
to
same,
competitors.
same, same, same.
So yeah,
Yeah, I don't look at what other media companies are doing. I don't care because I don't think their ideas are as good as mine, and I feel like you have the same idea, which
yeah,
is super great. So this is a little bit of an edgy question, but like, what does the future look like to you once you get this community? You also have the opportunity to offer them other financial services. I presume crypto's
yes,
already a part of this, if not. And I'm talking about like other very different financial services, like even being a
yeah,
distribution mechanism for insurance. And I always ask this, right? Because I have the biggest insurtech podcast in the world. But if you have all these
mm,
people in one place, and
yeah,
they trust you, because that's the whole point about financial services, right? If they trust you, then they'll
yeah,
believe your other products. What does the future look like to you?
yeah. So I want let's take a step back and why I want people to invest. So it's people it's very important that people understand the compounding.
Yeah,
Uh, how money compounds. But I think there's more to the investing. So let me talk about that a little bit. So there's more to investing because the financially literate people generally do better in life in terms of the wealth and how their career progresses. And the reason for that is once you understand the risk reward decisions, and also you understand like how the companies operate, cut costs, generate profit, how they interface with their shareholders, and governance, and all these things really make you a real like professional in business. And there's no better way of learning that than having some position in companies and actually following those companies. So I think that's actually really, really good for Japanese people to have as a skill set going forward. So I want really the young people to understand that it's not only about growing your money. It's actually much more than that. So yeah, coming back to your question now, that with that context, coming back to your question, I want Woodstock to be a go-to place for any investing. So whether you're investing in stocks or bonds or crypto and FX, whatever that is, and our priorities will obviously change and things will take a long time. But
for
I
sure.
want Woodstock to be a good place where people trust, and if I go there, I can get valuable advice. Not advice as in not like stock or recommendation advice, but like as in like just people just giving coaching, like, oh, this is a good book, or this is a how you should think, like that kind of advice, right? So this is where people should come for the community, their valuable community, and also for easy access to markets, and also easy access to a bunch of different financial products, but also just be a better financial literate, just increase your literacy in the markets, and therefore just become a better professional over time.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have friends in Thailand, right, that have not made through salary and personal income a ton of money, but started investing in little bits and pieces over time since their mid 20s and now in their mid
Mm,
40s. I won't say they're financially secure, but they don't rely on their income anymore
that's great.
for like what their
Yeah.
future is going to be, because they've just built up so, I don't even want to call it savings per se, but they built their own financial security just through this idea of compounding. And literally I'm
Yeah.
talking $30 a month, $50 a month, little bits and
Yeah.
pieces, and I'm
Anybody
amazed.
can do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anybody can do it. Yeah.
I'm
It's
amazed.
compounding is so powerful. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to tell people about Woodstock before I let you go?
Um, yeah, I mean, Woodstock, we just started 3 years ago, and we're just getting started. But we have a big dream to really change the reshape how people invest and how they think about markets. And I think the era of following professional research analysts recommendations and following that kind of like yeah, TV, what Mad TV says, and I think that era is over. I think there's going to be more and more people that are very, very quick at understanding markets, and very quick at sort of grasping these their edge, and in various different industries, and also yeah, I think the financial apps that are out there right now are getting outdated. So I think this social aspect is really going to change the world, and more people. We kind of see that already with like the GameStop and Reddit. It's kind of like a signal that this is happening, and people are, and hopefully they'll use it for in a good direction. Not like a gambling kind of way. So we're Woodstock. We're trying to make that happen, starting from Japan, because I think it's a really good cultural fit to do that, but hopefully beyond Japan too in the future. So yeah, thanks for having me again, Michael. This was great.
It's
Thanks
my
for
pleasure.
letting me tell my story.
It's my pleasure. Brian Yoon, a co-founder and CEO of Woodstock. Go take a look at it. I really appreciate you coming here and doing this today. This was awesome.
Likewise, thank you so much, Michael.